Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all the issues that affect the customer experience at your store. Because the better the experience, the more they come back to you for what they need when they need it. And I'm very fortunate. I've got a great network of friends and colleagues, and every week I bring them on to share with you what they do or what they've done to improve the customer experience at your stores. Actionable items you can use tomorrow in your store. Never any fluff, and we always get to the meat of it. So this week we welcome Phil Wiseman, otherwise known as The Real Dr. Phil. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Excited to be on the show, Paul. I really appreciate being here.
So give us your background. How did you start and how did you twist into what you're into now?
So a long story made even longer. I actually have a degree in chemical physics, which I know sounds very bizarre. I worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratories in college. I ran research labs. I worked at the University of Kentucky. I was in industrial wastewater treatment. And you're still sitting there going, what does any of that have to do with analytics? After I sold my last business, a friend of a friend owned a calibration business. And he said, hey, I hear you retired. And I sort of did retire. I sold the business. And he said, I could use some help with a few things. I was like, well, what do you need? He talked about sales. And I was like, okay. So I started working with this company and I looked at the website and I didn't know how to build a website. So I said, I think we need a newer website. So I hired someone to do that. And then I was like, maybe we should run ads so people can find us. So I hired an agency to do that. And then I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff means. So then I hired an agency to help me with that. And so I'm working with all these agencies, and every month it was the same thing: likes, clicks, impressions, shares, reach. And I was like, guys, I don't really care. I have payroll to meet. I have staff here. I want to know what interactions people had with the digital marketing that led them to ask for a quote. RFQs are what we called them. And so I just got very frustrated, and I was complaining to someone one night, and they're like, oh, you should learn Google Analytics. And I'd never heard of Google Analytics, didn't know what it was. And so they had all these free classes. Back then you could take these master level classes. I take all these classes, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can answer these questions. And so I went back to the owner of that business. I said, I just fired all these agencies today. We're going to do it ourselves. And in that process, I started connecting the dots of how many times did they touch an ad before they moved forward in the process? And then what pages brought the most people to the website? And then I started looking at, okay, how many people came to the RFQ page and actually submitted an RFQ? Should we make that process easier? And so I started looking at all this data and finding these friction points in the buying process and started to solve them. And I was talking to a friend, probably having a beer. I'll be honest, I have that from time to time. And he says, hey, Phil, every small business owner needs to know about this. I'm like, really? I thought I was the last guy on earth that had figured this out. But over the years, since I started Analytics at Profit, I have discovered that many business owners have the same questions I have. And sometimes they don't even know what questions they need to be asking from these marketing agencies and these ad agencies to get the right information.
Wow, that's quite a few turns to get to where you're at.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You know, it's funny. We kind of share some of the same quest in when we discover that we need to learn something, we roll up our sleeves and we learn it. And then we become better for it. But before we dig too much further, I want to just share with the audience how we met.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm kind of a shy guy, those that know me.
Yes, very, very soft-spoken and not outgoing.
So there I was. I'm live streaming at a KFC in Kentucky, in Florence, Kentucky, I think I was. And a buddy of mine who I went to high school with, he comments on my live stream and he says, hey, you're not too far from where I am. Why don't we meet for dinner tomorrow night at a place called the Wonder Bar, which is a German restaurant in Covington, right?
Covington, Kentucky.
Covington, Kentucky. Kind of a quaint little place. I walked in. I'd never been there. I hadn't seen Peter since high school many years ago. And so we sit down, these picnic bench style tables, and everybody's sitting together. Was it you that came up first, or was it Dennis?
So Dennis came up first, and then I guess Dennis, his friend was the cousin of Ken, who I knew.
Okay.
So then Ken says hi, and I just thought you were with Ken. We all sit at the same table because it's the quintessential dive bar, not knowing that the only two people that knew each other were Peter and Paul.
And then it starts off, I always do the random stranger selfie. And then if there's more than one person, the random stranger group selfie. So we did this selfie together, and now we've celebrated, 4 dinners together as a group?
4 dinners together. Whenever Paul's in the area, yes.
Every time I go to Kentucky, I reach out to my Kentucky friends. There are 6 or 7 of us, depending on who's available, that get together and we go out to dinner. So that's kind of an interesting meet. I got a couple of comments here from Nathan Williams. Phil could write a book. I wonder if you've ever considered that, Phil.
I have, but I can't share the title publicly because it's offensive.
He said, sure, if you use the term shy loosely, Paul. Well, yeah. I'm working on the shyness. You think I'm making some headway on it, Phil?
We're making progress. It's very encouraging to see your improvements.
So chemical physics, I don't even know what that is. Is that like chemical engineering, or what is that exactly?
So chemical physics. I was the first person in my family on both sides to go to college. And so my parents had determined I was going to be a doctor. Well, I quickly realized I didn't want to be a doctor. Took all the chemistry classes. I loved them. I took all the math classes. I loved them. I took all the physics classes. I loved them. So needless to say, I had a bit of a predicament. So my advisor comes to me senior year, and he's like, have you picked a major? You know, one more class, you could have a degree in physics. One more class, you could have a degree in math. One more class, a degree in chemistry. And I was like, I just couldn't make up my mind. He said, that's what I thought. He said, we have a kind of a unique program called chemical physics. Just keep doing what you're doing. In your last 2 semesters, you're going to do like an internship, co-op, whatever people call it now, at Oak Ridge National Labs. And you have to get 2 papers published on the work you're doing there, and we'll award you this degree in chemical physics. So it's kind of a made-up degree, but it's a real thing for those of us who couldn't quite decide what we wanted to major in.
But what is it exactly?
So imagine connecting all the dots on a physical plane. And so when we look at life in general, life really is about chemistry, math, and physics. Theoretical physics people will want to make a mathematical equation out of everything. That can be done. But also when you look at structures of molecules and atoms and how everything fits together, by taking all those classes, you get a very broad view of things. And so I think that's really helped me in my life because it was a liberal arts school. So I took literature, and I had to take world religions in addition to all these science classes. And so I just had a broader perspective on so many things. And I found in life that's helped me to some extent to not get hyper focused on just one thing and try to look at the bigger picture.
You know, it's interesting when I went to school and I took algebra, for instance, right? At the time, I wondered, what the hell am I ever going to use that for? And to your point, every single day in everything in my life, we use algebra.
Yeah, and I know that you fly a lot. And what's fascinating is if you look at flight patterns, the closest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. Planes do not fly in straight lines. They fly in curved lines to follow the surface of the earth because it's shorter. So a lot of these things we learn in school, when you have this bigger perspective, you're like, oh, but now you know. The
Oh,
worst business, 2
interesting.
points is not a straight line.
Never knew that. So every business has a website. They're all vying for that traffic, and dealerships in particular. I'm in the automotive field, I'm in the restaurant field, and I'm in the retail yarn field. And most businesses do not understand ROI as it relates to being able to measure their marketing efforts. There are some businesses, even some dealerships that I've gone into, that don't even look at analytics, as crazy as that may sound. But so why is it that so many businesses fail to understand the ROI in their marketing efforts?
And this is common across all industries, in my experience. I've worked with every sort of business you can imagine. And the problem most people have is they haven't defined success. They don't know what it looks like, what it feels like. And so they just go spend money because that's what you're supposed to do. And so that's the first problem. So if you're going to spend money on any type of marketing, you need to have a defined outcome. And that would be, we're going to spend X amount of money for Y amount of time to get Z number of clients. X to Y by when. There's a great book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. That's one of their founding principles, X to Y by when. Most people don't do that in their business, and they certainly do not do that with their digital marketing. So before you invest money, you need to go, what is it that it's going to do for me? What does success look like? Is that 10 customers, 10 sales, 100 units? And then the second biggest problem is people don't know what they should be measuring. Should I be measuring how many people saw my ad? How many people clicked on an ad? How many people visited the website? All those things are important, but when you've defined success as a certain number of sales, that's the number you should measure. All the other numbers play a small role, but all those other numbers could be great, but if you haven't sold more cars, they're meaningless.
So do you then so you define success, and that to a car dealership is how many cars they actually want to sell. Then do you back into the actions that you need to take based on previous data in that particular industry, or how does that work?
Yes. And so let's say, for example, that a car dealership knows that they close 50% of the people that come into the dealership.
Yeah.
Okay. If they want to sell so many cars, that number has to be double people coming into the dealership. That's kind of simple math.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've backtracked that. We now know we need this many people coming into the dealership. Now we need to look at avenues to get them to come to the dealership. But then the most forgotten piece in all of this is people, oh, that worked great. We spent $50,000 and we sold $500,000 of automobiles. We did great. No, you didn't. You may actually be losing money because people don't factor in their gross profit. So once you've backtracked all those numbers, success is measured on gross profit. And I see this happen a lot. People go, I spent $5,000, I made $10,000. That's an excellent return on investment. What was your gross profit? In most cases, people actually lose money in their digital marketing because they factor it on a one-to-one basis and not on gross profit.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because you're right. I see sometimes, a sale is made on an aged unit, let's say, and maybe, they high five that they made a sale, they made X amount of dollars, but they failed to take into account that car has celebrated a birthday on a lot, and the carrying costs have far exceeded any profits that they made in this sale, plus all of the other incidentals that a lot of dealerships, at least on the sales side of things, they don't even look at. They don't look at all of the hard costs associated with it, the personnel, any of the things, the servicing, a battery goes dead on the lot while the dealer owns it. Well, guess who's paying for the battery? It's not the OEM. Okay. And then there's lot damage and all these other things. So when they define success, you have to get really granular then. It's more than just selling a certain amount of cars. You need to know exactly which cars to sell. So you're targeting a certain inventory and what your opportunity for gross profit is in those specific cars. And then you know what your closing ratio is. And then you back into the analytics as far as how many particular clicks you would need in order to translate into actionable items, which gives you then that opportunity to close that sale.
Yes. And then another really intricate piece to this to make it even more successful is what I call segmentation. And so you'll have some sort of customer relationship manager software or you're keeping data on your customers somewhere.
Yeah.
The problem is salespeople hate that. They see no value in filling in all these blanks.
They don't use it.
They just want to get the sale and get them out of there, and they're happy. But the problem is, if you don't do segmentation, what I mean by that is, let's look at that client that's financing is easy, or they're paying cash, or whatever it is that makes the sale easy, and they also want the maintenance. They come back for maintenance. That type of data should be collected. Those are your ideal customers. Those are the people you want to come on the lot, not everybody else that's just a looker and a driver.
Right. Okay. My wife coming down. You're trying to be incognito. Hey, you want to say hi, honey?
No.
She
Let's
doesn't
see some yarn.
You said Mrs. Yarn. All right, come here.
Hello. Oh, is the show over?
No, it's on. You're live right now.
What's up?
You're the featured guest.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh man, yeah. The salespeople hate the CRM. It seems, salespeople. What salespeople want to do is show up for work, wait for the up bus to pull up, talk to them, hammer them into submission, send them down the road, and then wait for the next one to come in. All right. The CRM though is very critical, because if you know more, to your point, about your customers, then that's going to make it a more valuable experience. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I am a big fan of Davio's Northern Italian Steakhouses. They keep a CRM, probably better than most dealers do, because they note their regular customers, what their preferences are, what they like, things like that. So the first time I pulled up to the valet at Davio's Northern Italian Steakhouse, at the time there was one in Philly, the valet sees my license plate number. He sees I'm from Connecticut, welcomes me by first name. He says, we've been expecting you. The GM and the receptionist or the hostess are waiting for you at the hostess station to take you to your table. That's personalized service. Last night, we went to a restaurant we had not been since April, okay? I'd venture to say they've had a few people in the door since April. But guess what? When we sit down, the server, who I recognize from last time, says, hi, nice to see you. How have you been? How was the show that night? Because the night we went was before we went to see Chaz Palminteri in A Bronx Tale, a one-man show at the Guard, a theater, in the area. So she asked us how the show was. Now, how is anybody going to remember that? I don't think so. It's got to be written down in the CRM somewhere. So then they look at the appointments coming in. They see what the notes were from the last visit. They bring that up, and automatically you got the warm and fuzzy, right? That leads to a better experience.
Absolutely. And this applies across all sorts of industries. I have a friend that's a mortgage broker. She is meticulous with her CRM, and the payoffs are amazing because she knows for the value of the home and that interest rate, what the time span is going to be for that particular type of client when they want to refinance.
Okay.
So now she's going to sell number two. She also knows based on age demographic and the conversations. Are they planning to have children? When they're going to outgrow that home? And so then she gets that next sale again. So those meticulous notes people keep add to more sales. And oftentimes I'll talk to companies, and the HubSpot is one thing that I'm very familiar with, and they'll bring me in for HubSpot training. And I tell the salespeople the same thing. If you will give me an hour, you will close twice as many sales and work half as much, and just by doing what I'm going to ask you to do. And once I teach them how to use the CRM, and now with artificial intelligence, how you can query things, eyes open up, and it's like, oh my goodness, I can sell more and work less. Exactly. You can work smarter, not harder. And so a CRM is great for that. And that all gets into the whole data piece of knowing your ideal client, segmenting that down by client types, and marketing to those people. If anybody goes to my website and finds it offensive, it's because you're not a business owner, and I don't want to do business with you. My website is designed specifically for business owners. Business owners come to my website, they go, that guy gets me. That's how you want your marketing to be. When somebody sees your website or your ad, they're going to go, they understand me. They get my problems. They can help me. They've solved these kinds of problems. And now all of a sudden, you're a trustworthy, credible source.
Now, talk to me about the common misconceptions between clicks and conversions. Because everybody gets excited. It's just like I see sometimes people post stuff that, oh, we get a lot of likes and all this other nonsense. But I ask them, okay, that's great, but how many of those turn into actual purchases?
Yeah, so I like to explain it this way. So go into your local bank and you want to extend your credit line, or maybe you're looking for a loan, and share with them your likes, clicks, impressions, and shares. It's not going to go very far. On the other hand, if you go in and go, hey, I've closed 5 new customers this month. I've maintained 95% of my current customer base. They'll have an honest conversation with you about money. And so conversions can be called a lot of things. And oftentimes a conversion is, oh, somebody filled out a form. So a conversion is just talking about paths and steps that lead to a sale. Now, there's this free tool from Google called Google Tag Manager, and you can tag things and make them events and conversions to follow that path through. So once again, remember I talked about having a process and a defined outcome at the beginning. So when you've made those processes and defined the outcome, now you can backtrack and go, well, what steps do people take? Okay, do they fill out this form? Do they call me? Those are the things you need to measure, and those are conversions that are steps through the buying process.
So you're really, as a business, just so everybody out there understands it, you're in control of your conversion rate depending on what you set that conversion rate to be.
And unfortunately, people often get excited about the wrong conversions. And I hate to say it, Google Analytics is kind of deceptive in this way because, oh, they scrolled the page. They spent this much time on the page. They did this, they did that. They clicked a link. They went to this form. They went to this page. All those things are conversions. So what? Where do they fit in the buyer's journey?
And what revenue has been generated from that?
Exactly.
So I bet then a lot of businesses, dealerships, retail outlets, they're really looking at the wrong metrics.
Absolutely.
They're looking at the wrong data.
Yes. And I see this happen all the time. Part of the problem for that is, particularly with advertising and marketing agencies, they like to talk about reach and impressions and brand lift. And those things are important. Somebody has to see your ad. They have to reach so many people. But you can actually measure brand lift as an example. Recently working with a client, he had a long-standing relationship with his sales rep. She had switched companies. He decided to go with this program they were offering, and it was going to be, brand lift. And so how do we measure that, Phil? I was like, that's really very simple. In Google Analytics, that's going to be a search query. They're going to search your brand.
Okay. By name.
By name.
Direct search, otherwise
Yes.
it's known as.
Yeah. And so that's going to show up in your analytics as a query. And a query is just a search term people type in their browser.
Yeah.
And if in fact you're going to get brand lift, guess what? You should see more searches with your brand name. It's that easy.
It's I love being in retail at the same time as being on the vendor or training side of things, at the same time being in different industries, because I get to see some of this stuff in action. I may not fully understand what it is at the time, but I get to see more and more of it. So what I've noticed, we do a lot of content marketing in our yarn shop, and we reach crazy audience. I think we got a customer out of Japan recently, and we spend this much money on marketing. Okay, but we do a lot of content creation, particularly in social media. And what I've been noticing a lot is a good percentage of our top search terms are direct search. So not even fully understanding the brand lift piece of it, or as it's defined, clearly we're achieving that because of the number of direct searches on our company name that people are using and where people are coming from to find us. Wow, that's, it's so cool. Sometimes you find things out in a roundabout kind of way. You don't fully understand it until you look at data. And then you talk to a guy like you who knows this stuff. I bet you compute stuff in your sleep.
Well, the beauty of AI being so readily available, and I'll be honest, I switch AI platforms probably every 3 months because something better comes out all the time. What I used to do in Excel spreadsheets, now I've built these rather dorky, nerdy queries that I have. Right now, I use a tool called Perplexity. Other people might be using ChatGPT. So I build these queries, I throw the data sets in there, and I have it answer all those questions that I used to do with Excel spreadsheets. So it just makes my life a lot easier, a lot faster. And then I can spend time doing the deeper dive and going, okay, now this is what's happening. Why is it happening? And so
wait a minute, back up. That went a little fast for me.
Okay. So as we look at all this data now, and it can be a bit overwhelming. There's data on everything.
Yeah.
You've probably heard this Internet of Things. I mean,
Yeah.
look at your refrigerator, your television, a ring.
Heating system, everything.
Yeah, everything's sending data to somewhere, and there's just massive amounts of data. But the problem is that may or may not be relevant to your business. But when you do have data that is relevant, then you need to drill down in the data and ask some questions and let the data tell the story. And so many people don't let the data tell the story because they're so excited about the results. But you brought up a great point. You're doing these cool content pieces on social media. You're seeing people directly search your brand. And so now the next thing to do is go back and look at which of those content pieces had the most interactions. And then drill down on those successful ones and go, oh, let's do more of that. And let's do less of the ones that have the smaller reach, or maybe none of the ones that have the smaller reach. And so you keep drilling down and fine tuning based on the data.
So now you said you leverage the AI to analyze the data. So give me a for instance on how I would do something like that.
Okay, for instance, there's a tool called Google Search Console. It is free from Google, and it's typically attached to your Google Analytics if they're set up properly. Unfortunately, 80% of the times I work with a company, They are not connected and not set up properly. But Google Search Console gathers all those queries or search terms that people use, and your website showed up in those searches.
Okay.
So you then, and that's a massive amount of data, because it's going to tell you how many times you showed up, how many times people clicked through, what position you are in search, all this information, and you can see you're very easily overwhelmed. And so what I'll do is I'll take that entire data set.
Just copy, drag, and
Well, there's a little finesse, and you got to get rid of a few columns or you'll confuse the AI tools. But essentially, yes, you copy all of that data. But the problem is, if you just put that over in an AI tool, it doesn't know what to do, because for example, if you put it over in Chat GPT, it's just going to go out and find out what everybody else is doing and give you that same answer. That's not a good use of AI. What I do is I train the AI tool. So if I'm working,
you create the prompt.
in addition to creating the prompts, I also train the language learning model. And so what I mean by that is I give it a backstory. So here's Paul Meijer, dealer vendor match. I'm then going to tell it what your objectives are, what your missions are, what you want to be known for, what search terms do you want to show up for the internet, who your ideal client is. And I'm going to train it in that language learning model. So I'm going to bias it in Paul Meijer's favor, not the rest of the universe that is searching, in your favor. Once I've set that basic amount of information in there, then after that, then I'll create prompts. But I think this is a piece that most people don't do, is they don't understand. If I want great results, it's the old days of computers, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
Be thoughtful and think about, what do I want to be known for?
So wait a minute. That what you just created, that's not the prompt?
No. No.
So where does that live exactly? Like, how do you?
So there's all sorts of AI tools that will do this for you. I'm using Perplexity right now, and it has a thing called Spaces. And inside of Spaces, there's a place to put all this information. And then I make a discrete little space for that discrete little piece that I'm doing for each individual client. So a client might have several different spaces in there, because one might be for content creation, one might be for keywords, one might be for SEO. But I train it. This is the client. I tell it everything I want them to know about the client. How long they've been in business, what their business model is, what they want to be known for, what search terms they want to show up for. Maybe there's certain accreditations. Maybe they're ISO certified, or maybe they're a master plumber or a master electrician. All that information then trains that AI to think like that company. Then when you get to the prompts, the prompt part is easy, because anybody that's used Excel, we know exactly what we do. And so you do a VLOOKUP, look for this, look for that, look for that. And my prompts, somebody asked me to share a prompt one time, and they're like, you got to be kidding me, because my prompts are usually 2 paragraphs long. But the better the prompt, the better the information.
Right. Otherwise, it's generic BS.
Thank you.
I had a dealer. I asked a particular dealer about their experience with AI, and if they were leveraging it to make their work easier, right? Because let's face it, you and I are smart guys, and there could be 10 of us all put together and not come up with as good a response, both grammatical as well as content, than AI could do, and do it within seconds. So the spaces in Perplexity, does Chat GPT have that ability as well?
Different abilities, different setups, and inside of Perplexity, it can use Chat GPT, it can use Claude. There's so many tools out there, and this conversation can get so deep and complex. It almost gets absurd. But what I do like about Perplexity specifically is that I can, after I have an answer, for example, let's say I'm working with a client and they're like, hey, our competitor seems to be getting all this. And yes, you can use tools to find out how your competitor's traffic is getting there and how they're beating you. And
Yeah.
they're like, hey, our competitor's just crushing us on this. What can we do about that? And so you can use these AI tools to get you off the blank page. It's like, and there's another AI cool tool called relevance. And relevance, you can actually go in and put your competitor's web page and your web page and ask the AI which web page ranks higher for this search term. And it will tell you. And this is the gut check. I do this with my website and I get a gut check every time because it comes back. It will tell me this certain competitor is ranking higher for me, and it will tell me why and what terms I should be using and what opportunities I've missed. And
Wow.
yes. And this is the beauty of AI. These are all things I've been doing for about a decade now. With AI, what took me hours before takes me a minute and a half. And that's why it's so powerful. And from a sales perspective, just about every CRM has AI built into it. And you could go in there and query which customers' vehicles are 3 years old and call them, ask them
Very
information.
basic. Yeah.
Yeah. Go run a query. How many people did not buy the extended warranty and their vehicle's last service was at 60,000 miles or whatever those criteria might be? So
Yeah.
you can use it to build your prospect list in a minute, which before would have taken you hours by sorting and getting all this data. And so just from sheer efficiency, it's mind-boggling to me that people aren't embracing the efficiency aspect of this. Yeah, it's cute that you can go in there and use it as a search tool. You can go in there and query academic databases. I do that. I have questions and I want to look, what's the latest academic research on this? And I can focus the query just on published studies.
Yeah.
But just from an efficiency standpoint, and another great thing you can do with AI, and I do this all the time, I will give it my process as a prompt. Here's my process for, and every step I'll put in there. Tell me why this is brilliant. And then it'll query back. And I say, now tell me why this is stupid. And I'll let the AI argue for me, and you'll come up with a better process. It's simply,
Wow.
saves
This
time.
is stuff that I've not heard anybody talk about. And yet it's basic, it's simple, but it's so far out there that it's effing brilliant. Wow, I never even considered such a thing.
Yeah. And so the next time you want to have some fun, Paul, I know you'll appreciate this. So take your process when you're looking to a new customer and put all those steps in there. And you can attach documents to most of these AI tools.
Yes.
You can attach those documents to
Feed
use
it right
those as a knowledge base, and then just say, why is this the best approach? And it's going to tell you. And now you're going to go, oh, I feel so good about myself. You got to stroke your ego first. Now, what's wrong with this process? And then it's going to tell you what steps you've missed, or what steps are redundant, or what steps can be consolidated. And all of a sudden, you might be able to cut your process in half and double your close rates.
Mind-boggling. I don't think anybody other than guys like you who've been doing this for so long are even thinking along those lines. Yet it's, I get so excited when I have conversations like this about something new that I learn. And I could see how this would be really something. I mean, we talk about differentiation, right? Look, there are thousands of businesses that sell the exact same thing, essentially, other than the name is different and maybe the colors are different. Some of the options are different. But for the most part, when we're talking about basic transportation, there are thousands upon thousands of competitors. And how do we differentiate ourselves from the other one? Phil, I got to hand it to you, man. That is a mic drop moment right there in nuggets for improvement. when I look at video, take video, for instance, okay, everybody and his brother knows that video is an area that's great for engagement. I hate to say it, people, but people are lazy. Let me just acknowledge here David Lucas. He says, good morning, gents. Thank you. Good morning. That means you must be on the other side of the planet. And he says it makes sense. So everybody's talking about differentiation, right? And we know the value of video. But here's the part where I think everybody's missing the boat. As much as we talk about differentiation, nobody really wants to be different. It seems as though everybody is advertising for the exact same video clipping program because everybody's video looks exactly the same. The top piece, the bottom piece, and the text that lights up, highlighted along the way, right? It's the same. There's no differentiation. If you turn off the volume of that video, you'd be hard pressed to tell me who the hell that company is and what they're even selling, because everybody's doing the exact same thing.
Exactly. And the key piece that is missing in most marketing are the emotions.
Yeah.
And so I surround myself. I learned, so with my last business, I had a very good friend who was ungodly successful. His plant had 1 million square feet of manufacturing. So that should give you the scale of his business acumen. And so he actually manufactured my products and we were college roommates. And I remember when I was starting out my business, I said, Richard, and here's a guy my age that's exponentially more successful than I am. I said, look, if there's anybody that I trust and respect in business, it's you. Tell me what I need to know. And he told me something that he said, Phil, this is going to be the most difficult thing for you to know because I kind of know how smart you are. You got to hire people smarter than you and understand that's why you hired them. And if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that was hard for me to digest. It probably took me 1.5 years to realize I had to surround myself with much, much more intelligent people than myself and shut up and listen. Paul knows me well. I don't like to shut up and listen. And so over the years, this is another beauty of AI. I use a tool called Read AI, and I have a live meter on my video meetings with clients because I talk too damn fast and I talk too much. And so I programmed it to tell me, red flag me when I've monopolized the conversation and when I'm speaking too fast. And so a little thing will pop up. Hey, you're at 150 words a minute. That's too fast for most people to digest. And then it'll go, hey, you've talked over 50% of the time. And so it's time for Phil to shut up. Now, some exceptions to that would be if I'm doing a one-on-one training with a client and I might be talking more. But tools like that really help us. And then it also has a sentiment tool. It will read the words. It automatically transcribes. So it'll read the words and it'll let you know if people are engaged with your conversation or not. And so initially, I would take those, I would digest the reports, and I go, oh, I need to fix this. Then they had an upgrade. This is why everything is exciting. Then they had an upgrade. You can see this in real time. It's going to be an extra $20 a month. Best $20 I ever spent.
No joke, man.
And so now I look at that and I'll be in a meeting and I'll go like this. And then people will talk.
I'm still blown away over the whole concept of using the AI and your process to make a better process. I've never, I like to pride myself on thinking about a lot of things. And Greg Dudley here, who love the guy dearly, he contributes some great things on LinkedIn. He says people consistently say, I'm overthinking. My head is in this space consistently. And there's no such thing as overthinking. I don't believe, because all we're trying to do is we're trying to get better at what we're trying to do, right? We truly love what we do and we're in it all the time. I joke with people. I tell them I put things into my head that I want to solve, and I go to sleep. And in my sleep, it is like I am on a low, deep scan to look for the answer. And no shit, but I'll wake up and I will have some of that information solved in my head that I expand on the next day.
And one of the best tools we have, this little thing here. Yeah, that's my grandson's picture. You probably can't see it for the glare. These thoughts come to you. Just get your phone out and do an audio note. And then when you get back to the office, you're going to have these 20 audio notes. Throw it into AI and just ask it, what the hell was I thinking? And it actually can coalesce your thoughts once you've trained the language learning model to think like you and all those other sorts of things. But yeah, AI is here. And it's not a matter of it's going to overtake you or put you out of work. It's efficiencies and it's ways to examine processes. In a previous life, I taught quality engineering classes, and very process driven, obviously. And we had tools that were manual that you would, go through process. Like Toyota had a great process called the 5 whys. If there was a problem, you go, Paul, why did that happen? Once you got to the 5th why, you would get close to the root cause or the true problem. And so with AI, instead of having to do that manually, you can have an iterative process that gets better and better. And then for content creation, most of the crap emails I get, and I've been in LinkedIn jail 4 times this year, because if you send me a shitty email, I will put you out in public on LinkedIn. I do it all the time. I'm thrown in LinkedIn jail for usually 3 to 4 days. I don't care, because I can tell when crap is AI generated.
Right.
And also it disturbs me that people still don't know there's the Can Spam Act and don't follow the laws about spamming me. So I'm going to call you out. I'll put your company in. Whatever you sent me in an email, you're free game. So, but most people are not using AI properly because they're looking at it to replace them instead of making them
enhance.
Yes.
To enhance and to get better, to do better with less, right? We talked today about, in today's business world, we need to do more with less. At no time in history have we, the common man, have the tools and ability to achieve just that if we only spend a little bit of time educating ourselves on it.
And most of the platforms that I'm involved with AI have fabulous tutorials, and they're not written at a level that you have to understand any kind of code. I love it when people say, oh, this is a code-free platform. Well, not if you want to do the really cool stuff. I don't write code anymore. I haven't for years. I'm not going to learn. I hire people to do that because they're smarter than me. Remember that thing I said before? Hire people smarter than you and realize why.
People have trouble with that. It's an ego thing.
Yes. And that really speaks to a whole nother thing about data. And one of that is confirmation bias. One of the biggest problems people have with data is they look for data that reaffirms their position.
Oh my God.
Social media sucks at this because you coalesce around people with your same beliefs and views. And
echo chambers.
Yeah, you become myopic. The same thing happens in data. A good example, you're advertising in the newspaper. Well, my mother is 91 and she still reads the newspaper. If she's your demographic, that's probably a good place to be. But because we've done this or it's worked in the past, no. You're just looking for answers to justify decisions instead of looking at defined outcomes and reverse engineering the process. And then the second biggest problem in marketing with all this data is cognitive dissonance. And I see this happen all the time. I've met Paul, we've had dinner, he's a great guy. But guess what? You can go to the bank or I can have a beer with my buddy. And the problem with cognitive dissonance is we get so emotionally attached to either that agency, that sales rep, that whatever, we don't really listen to the data. I recently had this conversation with a client. this company was running Facebook ads. First, they were given a brand and style guide. They didn't use the correct fonts, didn't use the correct colors. I caught that first time off. And so I called them out on that and said, hey guys, you had a brand and style guide and the work you've done so far is not acceptable. So they went back, came up with new creatives. It wasn't a whole lot better. So I went to my client. I was like, look, I'm just not impressed with these guys, but if you want to give them a run, here's the numbers we need to see. So they gave them a run and they sucked. There's no nice way to say it. They produced nothing. And the data, so then they came back to me and was like, oh, well, you didn't install our pixel correctly. And for those that don't know what a pixel is, every
copy and paste.
Every marketing agency,
how can you mess that up?
Has a little script. You throw it on your website and it gives the attribution to them. Yeah. So that wasn't messed up. Google Tag Manager, I showed them was firing correctly. So finally, after 3 months, I had a conversation with them before the holiday. And I said, look, I know you like, and I won't name this person by first name. I said, but you're not letting the data. He goes, I know, Phil. I've known her for so many years. I've worked with her in so many different places. Kaizen, yes, I wrote a blog on that. Kaizen and marketing. Love it, Greg. And I also wrote a blog on Kanban. So that's a whole nother conversation about pulling your content. But yeah, so we have this cognitive dissonance.
Please share those 2 articles in this thread afterwards. All right. I
will. I have to. So what's funny, Greg, is today talking about AI. So one thing you need to do from time to time is just have the gut check. So I recently switched themes on my website, and a theme is just how it's laid out. That was very simple, except one problem was I changed the theme on the blog. I like it a lot better. It had a bunch of fill in the blank stuff. So now I'm having to literally go back in to every single blog and edit things individually. I can't do it at the theme level. And so I've been going through my blogs and I've been looking at their performance. And I have some really, really bad blogs that nobody's reading. So I deleted them. That was very difficult for me because I loved the effort I put into them, but the data said nobody else cared, Phil. And so I just deleted them. And it's, it's kind of that harsh reality. But the Kaizen and the Kanban blogs, they're actually in my queue to get updated tomorrow. But yes. Good stuff.
No, that is really, really good stuff. But and to your point, a lot of people are reluctant to change, right? They stay with what they've been doing because they don't want to put forth any effort to look into possibly a better way to do things. And it's a lot easier to just say to your agency, what do I need? How much is it going to cost? How much do I make the check out to? Than it is to actually hold somebody's feet to the fire and say, hey, listen, because I look at a lot of creative, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you. Most of the creative looks exactly the same. There is no difference. It's stuff that's been around since the 70s. Okay, maybe it's a higher tech camera that's used today, but as far as the storyboard is concerned, the scripts, all that stuff has not changed any.
Insert your company name here. Insert your product here. I actually just had an agency fired. It wasn't my goal to get them fired, but a local service company approached me. He's like, yeah, I'm spending all this money and I just don't know if it's working, Phil. So I took a look and they were doing emails and blogs. And so I said, hey, do you have access to your analytics? He goes, yeah, I do. So I looked at his analytics. I saw no attribution from the blogs. I couldn't find the blogs in his analytics. So that really, and I was like, this makes no sense. And no attribution for emails. And so I dug a little deeper. And what I found out was these blogs were being hosted on this marketing agency's aggregator page. And hand to God, what I just said, they had a blog for everybody in his industry. And it was just insert company name here, insert phone number here. They were all the same. Those links didn't go to the client. The emails, the links went back to this aggregator marketing site. Once I explained this to my client, he's like, no, that's not what I signed up for. So he fired him immediately and hired me. Wasn't my goal. My goal is to educate people.
Right.
But in this case, he was so upset because he felt so deceived.
Yeah, no
He thought,
kidding.
he thought the traffic was going to his website. He thought the blogs were being written on his website. And so there's a
Wow.
lot of bad things going on. But to your point, I got to tell everybody, it's really simple. If you want to have great content, just write this down. Trust me, get a pen and paper and write this down right now. What 5 questions are you asked every week? You now have your content plan for the next year. Answer those questions. When people search the internet, the data now shows that people are using 12, 13 words in a long phrase. When you answer questions in that fashion, you will rank higher in search, and you're going to attract your ideal client better. A great example of this, and I was talking with a client, they happen to be a plumber. So I like to talk to the front office people that get all the phone calls every quarter. And so I said, hey guys, what weird questions have you gotten this week? And they're like, oh my God, everybody's calling about their toilet making a hissing sound. I was like, wow, okay. So sure enough, there had been some water main repairs and, so I wrote a blog for them called, Why is My Toilet Making a Hissing Sound? It exploded. 30% of the website traffic now comes from that blog alone.
Wow.
And that blog's a year old. So guess what else I write about? Why does my AC make a hissing sound when it shuts off outside? Hissing sound is a term that we use when we search the internet when we have problems around HVAC equipment, water heaters, sinks, toilets. Just think about it.
I never even thought about using that as your content.
Yes. Answer those 5 questions.
So can you then do a search for that type? Can you search for what the top questions are, or is it specific to your industry to make it more authentic, we'll say?
So let's get back to AI and all the cool tools.
Yeah.
There are a lot of cool tools out there that you can actually put in. So the first thing I'd suggest you do is start with Google Ads, not buy ads. Open a Google Ads account, and they have a thing called Keyword Planner. And it will tell you the search volumes for certain keywords. And it'll show you how they're trending this quarter and how they're trending year over year. And so you might get excited. Oh, 10,000 people search for that. You don't have a snowball's chance in hell of ranking for that. Find something that there's 1,000 to 2,000 searches and get uber niche with that phrase. That's where your ideal client is. You're not going to compete against, my big joke was you're not going to compete against JCPenney, but maybe they're going out of business now. I don't know. But, they spend millions and millions and millions on advertising. You're not going to get that space. But when you answer that question very specifically, you can rank and outperform them for that search term. So that's one way. See what the search volumes are. Look for those little niche terms. And then there's a really cool tool called Answer the Public. It's now integrated with a tool called Uber Suggest. You can, to answer your question, Paul, hand to God, you put the words in there you're thinking about. It'll give you the what, where, why, when, and how, prepositions and adjectives. And it gives it in this really cool picture and gives you those complete statements. And then you can take those over to AI, because my biggest problem in writing is I'm terrible at writing. I use Grammarly because I'm a science major. I'm just terrible at that stuff. I'm terrible about getting started. So I'll go over to AI and I will write these stupidly long prompts about what I think I want to write about, which probably is a good outline. But AI will come back and I'll go, oh, that's interesting. Let me research these 3 things. Oh, that's where I was going. Let me research that some more. And by the time I get done, 4 or 5 iterations, I've got some excellent content because I've explored a couple of themes, gotten some ideas. Then you add to that data, your real life experience, customer examples, real stories. Then for me, I have to throw it in Grammarly because I just stink at that passive voice and tense and all that stuff. Greg, I love it. 80% more words than average. Yeah. When I write for a client that's an ISO certified fastener supplier, I used to write a calibration blog. So yeah, Grammarly would go, no, these words don't exist. But I have to tell it, yes, they do.
I think you and Greg are going to connect after tonight's episode, because you and he would have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So yeah,
wow.
lot of cool things going on. It can get overwhelming, but the main thing is define where you want to go. This week, I'm going to Florida because it's 20 degrees here in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and it's not that in Panama City Beach. I've been there before, but guess what? I'm going to get out Google Maps. I'm going to tell it where I want to go. It's going to inform me along my journey. Hey, this road shut down. There's this delay. There's that delay. Your marketing should be the same way. Know exactly where you're going, how long it should take you to get there. And when you see these little bumps in the road, do course corrections.
You have shared so many great nuggets here that if people take the time to listen to it again, I think they can take what they're doing now to entirely new levels where they have not been before, because you've introduced some things here that I have not heard people say, that I am sure, based on the number of stores that I walk into, they could improve what they're doing by just applying some of these very simple things. Just before we're at and beyond the hour, but the tool you mentioned before, Perplexity, is that like ChatGPT, for instance, $21.95 a month, something like that?
They have a free version, just like ChatGPT. To get the spaces, like I was talking about, $20 a month. Not bad. So there was Perplexity. There'll be something better in 3 months. And so when we talk about this 6 months from now, I'll have something else that I like better. Relevance is another cool tool for comparisons. It's free. You can also have a paid version of that if you want. Grammarly is an AI tool.
Yeah.
I use the paid version. Now, Google Analytics is free. Google Search Console is free.
Okay.
Using the Google AdWords Planner is free. And then there's a tool called Answer the Public that's now been merged with Uber Suggest. I pay for that subscription because it does a lot of really cool things for me for SEO.
Yeah.
But you can get some basic answers for free. So most of these things we're talking about, you're looking at $20 a month. So it's not like, and to be honest, to me, it's they're simply brilliant in their marketing, because guess what? For $20, I'll try something. We all will.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, thank you so much, man.
My pleasure.
It's great to have you on the show tonight. Thanks for sharing all this information. Thanks to those that watch it live. Thanks to those that watch it on the replay. If there's anyone that you think would see value in this, by all means, share the show and or information with them. Can't wait to see you in 2 visits. We're going to miss you at the next one, but the one after that will be breaking bread. So we have to come up with the venue for that. I wish everyone a safe and successful next week. Phil, stay on for a moment after we go off the line here. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks for watching.